I swear these products also dump amino acids, like individual amino acids in the product.
Mhm.
So you have a really long list of ingredients and they sound really cool. Like blah 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 peptides, alanine, valine, threonine, da 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 pa. We have all these things. I'm just like, ah.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Chemist Confessions Podcast. I'm Victoria.
And I'm Gloria.
This is a human conversation on all the skincare science we talk about on the daily. And today we are talking about peptides.
Goodbye.
Peptides. We have a lot of feels and we don't talk about peptides a lot. And it's because we have so many feels that are lukewarm because it's just a generally confusing category and a confusing arena of science as well. So this is going to be a little bit different than some of the other ingredient-based episodes we do. We will go through and review what peptides are in skincare, but we are not going to talk about the science or the data because, and you'll see why, but ultimately we find that it would be a lot more helpful for us to talk more about products and how to shop for this realm. So let's get started. Let's just go jump right in and talk about what exactly are peptides.
Yep. So peptides, this is almost going to feel like a high school biology class for a hot second. But peptides are actually very simple. They're just they're just small molecules made of amino acids, very specifically up to about 50 units, even though in the context of skincare, we're usually talking about 2 to 8, maybe 10 units. So they are small molecules. And amino acids are these building blocks that form your proteins, your enzymes, and whatnot. There's a lot of amino acids in the grand scheme of things, but within human biology or proteins in general, there's only about 22 or so relevant amino acids. And you can think of these as Legos. So each amino acid is one Lego block, and peptides are essentially chunks of these pieces, 4, 8 at a time. So they are medium-sized blocks made up of amino acids. And to give context, it won't function like a protein or enzyme until you get to like 100 or even 1,000 peptide or amino acid length type of structures. So that's kind of what they are in a nutshell.
There are many peptides out there. And so this is where some of that complexity comes in, because if you can imagine, as Gloria mentioned, this some odd 20-ish amino acids, think of the combinations you can build of varying sizes of peptides. And so this is why being able to sift through some of the data and some of the existing peptides that we use in skincare, we're just going to tell you right off the bat, there's going to be a lot of new ones that will come, that will always be launched every year. And there are so many of them that have either zero data or we could just tell you don't really do very much. And so that's kind of the pain point that we have with peptide skincare.
What we're describing, these different combinations you can make with amino acids, with 20 some amino acid, you can pick out, even within just dipeptide, just 2 amino acids, you have all these combinations you can come up with. And in skincare, these new ones that come out, they're also tails and the things you can add on to it, where you'll hear in names like palmitoyl, something, something peptide, and also things like copper peptides. And it just throws in, just magnifies the complexity 1,000 times.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of, copper peptides are probably the first in this arena to really gain some attention and gain some spotlight in the research world. Fun fact, copper peptides were the first that were created in this general realm of skincare and medical research and was created in 1973. That's the same year when Roe v. Wade had passed and also when the whole Watergate scandal had happened. So that's really how long copper peptides have been around. And we will first kind of talk about peptides in terms of skincare, because what Gloria and I realize is a lot of people don't know what peptides actually do. I think they just think of them as like an anti-aging claim and they fight wrinkles, but the actual understanding of them, no one actually knows. Yeah.
That's actually such a good point, because I think this is also one of the reasons why we have a hard time touching on this topic is we love linear stories. That's a little easier for us to tell. This product interacts with tyrosinase, slows it down, therefore, ta-da! But peptides is so vast. How they work, why they work, what they do to skin can all be very different. But there's such a it's one of those categories. There's just an even wider disconnect with the science and the marketing
Yes.
because the marketing is almost like a cure-all, and all peptides are some sort of mystical ingredient that just work. But the reality is there's a lot of concrete science, but there's a lot of science and they're all different.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even to add to that is you'll see that peptides can treat different skin concerns.
Hmm.
And that's also why it's so hard to talk about because, you know, what you might be thinking that it fights wrinkles, but it can also have brightening properties. So it's just, clearly you'll see that it's trying to work in different pathways. So, I found a review paper just to kind of sum up the peptide realm. And this is actually not even, and this is really focused on for skin, but you can think about this. Peptides are also used in other skin functions outside of skin as well. So it's a vast, vast world, but they can essentially be broken down into four categories. And I should also preface that we're going to go through the science, but you're going to see that it's not very helpful when it comes to shopping for skincare. But this is just more enrichment for you guys. So you understand, maybe as you read claims and whatnot, why the claims seem very, I
Different
think,
and wide across
and
different peptide products. Yeah.
yeah, and generic and just not very detailed. So, four categories. So, you have signaling peptides. So, these are
Hmm.
going to be peptides that are going to try to kick off certain processes and mechanisms. A lot of them will try to look at stimulating collagen production. So, that's one category. Number two, you have carrier peptides. These are going to be things like your copper peptides, where they're trying to act as they call transportation facilitators. They're trying to provide specific substances that are going to benefit cells and their cell function. You have a third category, which is they call it neurotransmitter inhibiting peptides. These peptides are going to help almost prevent things like expression wrinkles. They want to, it's kind of feels similar a little bit to Botox, but the idea is that they're trying to prevent, the frown lines from occurring
Hmm.
as you are displaying expression. And then finally, you have your enzyme inhibiting peptides. These are going to reduce the activity of enzymes that are actually serve as catalysts to processes that actually spur on aging. So, as you can see, the point of me sharing this is for you to understand that uh, marketers are not going to talk about any of this because it's
Yeah.
going to flag the FDA hardcore.
Red flag, red flag. Actually, yeah, not a single one of these have a green flag claiming anything Victoria just said.
Yeah. But as you can see, the goal is that they really are trying to work with some of these processes. And, if you've been a long time listener, you know that there are many processes in skin that do play a part into actual skin concerns like forming wrinkles and hyperpigmentation. That generally is the takeaway on the biology of peptides.
I think all these sound pretty exciting, and we'll get into it more on the product end of how these actually translate to
Mm,
product claims and functions and clinical tests. And I will say again, like just even within, say, signaling peptides category can be really vast, right? Like, what are they signaling? What are they
mhm.
targeting? And it feels like sky's the limit, but it's also very murky because sky's the limit.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, we highlight the benefit, but we didn't share, the degree of efficiency that these peptides,
Hmm.
the actual efficacy level of these peptides. And I think that's why, because it can differ so much between different peptides, and also the fact that who the supplier, the ingredient source, how they make it can also impact that, makes this category, it's like sexy and mysterious and it sounds biotech, and a lot of these products can be more expensive, but it's also probably one of the least transparent categories, in my opinion, of skincare.
Because of all these different pathways, peptides linked with almost all the skin concerns you can think of out there. And we'll say you'll probably hear about it the most in the context of anti-aging. So firming, wrinkles, even lifting, sagging. I think peptides just as a whole category has been looked at the most in these categories. It's actually also some peptides have been tested for even things like pigmentation, soothing, calming, acne, even. There is
Mm-hmm.
just so much. And we will say this, we're going to keep reiterating this point and we'll do our best to kind of help you guys navigate the product landscape. But even as chemists, there is a lot of interpretations to be had because a lot of the
Mm.
data lies with the supplier. Ultimately, there's a handful of companies that create these peptides. Let's say someone is trying to sell you a tetrapeptide. This is a combination of four of these Lego pieces. Which four? How are they tagged onto each other? Is it just linearly? Is it sideways? Like all these can change how this peptide functions. But what you get on a sheet, on the ingredient list, is it just says tetrapeptide. So how are you supposed to discern what it actually does from name? You kind of can't. You just have to. A big part of our job, if we are working on a peptide project, is a lot of reading, a lot of going through supplier data. And this is where a lot of leaps of faith will have to happen between the consumer and the brand to kind of trust that they have done their due diligence, that they have these chemists that's sitting in the background doing, okay, what does this actually do?
Yeah. And so we've sort of opened up the can of worms too, guys. So to summarize what peptides are, it's a class of ingredients. Okay.
Mhm.
A lot of the data is proprietary to the supplier. And the other takeaway is that peptides are not just claimed for anti-aging, and you'll see why in the next section, but it can be for very specific processes. So it can be for wrinkles, firmness, skin texture, but also even more differing categories like hyperpigmentation, acne, soothing. So, hopefully you guys don't think of this as just for anti-aging. Like, I
Mhm.
think all the other ingredients we talk about, there's a very clear box, this realm that they play in. But this one is almost like a very broad library that we're looking at. So we're going to take a quick break and then we'll talk about the actual peptide product landscape.
Fun fact, Double Play's amazing retinol is also paired with one of our favorite peptide blends, the haloxyl. This is created by Sederma to specifically tackle dark circles. We paired these two together to address both face and eye area concerns and had this formula clinically vetted to significantly reduce hyperpigmentation, wrinkles, crow's feet, and dark circles in 12 weeks. So no need for just a tiny jar of very expensive eye cream.
If you're curious to try this retinol product out and you're new to our brand, please use code CCPodcast2024 for 15% off your order. For returning customers, please use code PodcastShip2024 for free shipping off your next order. We are back. Now, let's talk about the peptide landscape. And we're just going to warn you guys right now, brace yourselves, because this landscape doesn't have that much logic to it. It's more just groupings that seem to have some correlation. So we'll start with the first one. We are going to start with budget peptide serums. So these are serums that are very affordable, but are blends of peptides. And that's really it. They're usually in this like aqueous serum.
Yeah, and I will say we did Victoria Victoria had a lot of thoughts about how to organize these landscape. And we know we talked about skin concern, we talked about, like how do we compare maybe two products at a time? And the answer is none of them work. So we are like, you know what, whatever. Let's just go off of price category. What are some products that's worth talking about in each of these categories? When we're talking about low cost peptide products, we have to talk about the ordinary. Their multi-peptide serum is probably a lot of people's first foray into this category. You may or may not already have some peptides swimming around in your routine, but this is one of those products that just touts, we have peptide, we have lots of peptides, and it is such a low, compared to a lot of really fancy peptide products, it's a low commitment level. So I think most people have actually probably tried this at least once.
I'll tell you right now, it has a blend of several peptides. Some of the callouts is acetyl-hexapeptide 8. That's one of the main ones, pretty much in conjunction with like Matrixyl, in terms of, their skin benefits are also around reducing wrinkles. They also have a couple other ones, pentapeptide 18. All that to say, this is just a big blend of peptides plus hyaluronic acid. I think some of the concern I have with these, and it's honestly not a lot. I do agree. It's like if you want to dabble in peptides, this is probably the realm that everyone's going to start in. Is just that the combination of these peptides and peptides in general, the amount that you would need to see benefit is not insignificant. And so
Yeah.
with all of these, I just feel like, we're really looking at almost like the cocktail effect of everything.
Hmm.
However, I just think, that's probably, if I were to nitpick here, that would be the thing to keep in mind. But otherwise, I think this is that classic serum that's very affordable. And I did want to call out that The Ordinary does have this blend plus a copper peptide for $5 more. If you want to know which one you should choose, the thing I would probably go off of is that the multipeptide serum does have a little bit of clinical data where they do mention that they did see significant benefits in skin smoothing, firmness, and wrinkles. It's a very general claim. So that's the one thing where I was like, just keep that in mind. But it does have some sort of data, whereas the copper peptide one, I didn't see all that much there. Yeah. And I guess, Gloria, how do you feel about copper peptides knowing what we know?
I think that's one subject. That's another one of those things that I think has come back into style because we're starting
Yeah.
to see more questions about it again.
Yeah.
And that's one I'm just like trying to pretend I don't see the questions because I don't love it. It's a very, very, very fussy ingredient. You'll hear about some talks about it maybe not compatible with ascorbic acid. I mean, from a formula perspective, there's a long list of things that you cannot make this with, and then you should not make it above pH of Blay, below pH of Blay, and then it should not be used in conjunction with this list of common skincare ingredients. It's just, and for what it does, for the data that I'm able to see, I don't know if it justifies that much workaround to make it work. That's ultimately how I feel about it.
I also have to say that, the level of mystery, it's like even in the supplier data, going from different ingredient suppliers, their suggestions around formulation are also different. So that
Yes.
also bothers me, is like
Mhm.
why one supplier will say, don't formulate this laundry list of stuff with copper peptide. And another one, we've definitely encountered those that are also like, I don't know, just do
This
what
is
you want with
great.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
just
stable, much
dump it in
stable.
whatever, and then, it has such a long history, but the data is just so wishy-washy. And it's probably because of this. It's probably because of this sensitivity and this lack of understanding around how to handle this molecule. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's always a kind of we're like, don't know what to say about copper peptide.
Yeah, so let us know what you think of
Mm,
these products, if they work for you. We do have, oh, actually I did want to mention real fast that if you're curious about these peptide, I guess, these trademark names around these peptide blends that say the ordinary called out the Matrixyl and Matrixyl synth and all of that stuff. A lot of them are produced by the supplier Sederma. And Timeless is another brand that has
mm.
like budget products that feature usually one of these like star Sederma actives. Also, kind of a budget friendly place to start trying out peptides in your routine.
Yeah, I should mention they do have two products. They have the Matrixyl serum and they have a Matrixyl synth serum. So they don't do blends. And
They do a combination,
for
yeah.
yeah, and for 1 ml, you're definitely getting recommended the target concentration amount. The price point is a bit similar. It's about $30. So agree with Gloria. That's a good point to definitely worth considering there. We should mention this product. It's probably going to be something you're going to compare it to when you're deciding between budget-friendly peptide serums. The cost for CosRX is $25 for 150 ml. It's actually even cheaper. They also do a blend where they have a couple shared similar peptides. They have the acetohexapeptide 8, which I mentioned before for fine lines and wrinkles. But they also have the dipeptide diaminobutyryl benzylamide diacetate. And this one, the reason why they use it is because this is actually one of those neurotransmitter signaling peptides where it's actually trying to prevent your muscles from contracting and creating those expression lines.
Mhm.
This is kind of a popular one in a lot of peptide claims where you'll see lingo like before you get Botox, so just something I thought I'd point out. But other than that, the peptide blends is slightly different. Their claims.
Yes, is long and vast, and I feel like covers everything we talk or tries to cover almost everything we talked about in part one. This is
Yeah.
definitely a a product that's very explicitly placed as a catch-all serum or
Hmm.
catch-all product. I feel like it's almost positioned more as an essence or toner type of first step product.
Yes.
So first of all, they did a consumer perception to talk about the moisturizing aspect of the product. They said 100%. I'm picking and choosing a couple of these bits. They said that 100% agreed. So this is consumer perception. A pleasant moisture sensation was experienced, and I was like, I'm not someone that gets eked out with the word moist or moisture, but that was a very weird way of using that statement. But
Pleasant
okay.
moisture is a phrase.
Yes, it is a choice. And they have this really ballsy chart that we're gonna put up that has all these stats that says plus 162.5% hydration, plus 76.42 skin texture, which I don't think they mean increase in skin texture. I think they mean
Yeah.
improve skin texture. Plus 22% skin density, which is a very not super kosher claim to be making here. Radiance plus 24%, clarity up 40%, brightness up 38%. It's definitely a lot.
Yeah. And they have a couple slides that are also kind of like, it's weird. It's like, yeah, we want
Mhm.
more testing, but there's something off that's like a little too aggressive in my taste where for me where they actually show like penetration and improvement underneath the skin.
Yeah.
Um and I don't know, Gloria, because I almost feel like these are two very polarizing products because
Mhm.
The Ordinary actually doesn't have that many claims, but then CosRX has like a lot of claims. Which
Yeah.
one makes you feel more comfortable, Gloria?
Honestly, the CosRX one, it's probably a product I would say if you're interested in peptides, I think can be worth trying. It's budget friendly. It's got blends of pretty interesting peptides. But I think this is one where even me, I have a hard time telling you what this product is good for, right?
Mm,
So first of all, hydration, they did the claims. I don't love this type of imaging. They have, we'll put the image up. They have the before after hydration increase after 4 weeks. This is not a super common way of testing for
yeah,
hydration. So I don't really know how to place it compared to
yeah.
hydration actives. So right off the bat, I would say, okay, forget about the hydration claim. I would not replace any of my hydrating serums,
Mm,
any of those products with this. So that's right off the bat. The second claim I wouldn't take seriously and replace is the skin brightening and radiance claim. So if you have a very regimented hyperpigmentation routine, I'm gonna put the before after up. There are pictures that we squint at, and then there are pictures where like, what? Like,
yeah,
yeah.
not the greatest photo, not the greatest. Also, it feels like it undermines like the science, like high tech imagery that they tried to use. So, yeah, I totally agree. This is I would probably not really take this claim too seriously.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing, a good thing you brought up, Gloria, is really just it's important to manage expectations here. I
Mhm.
think with the price point, it's definitely worth trying, but also know that we are not expecting miracles with this being added to your routine, despite all of these numbers and images that are being thrown at us.
The anti-aging aspect of the claim, I also wouldn't take too seriously. They show this imaging of it's highlighted in green to show increase in skin density over time, which
Mm.
can be really compelling. Not gonna go into the legalities of the claims, but there's no with all this before after pictures they throw at you on other claims, anti-aging not having a regular skin before and after to me says a little bit more about the level of
Mm.
efficacy you can expect. It could be helpful, but it's probably not going to be, say, visually correcting, is my expectation.
Right.
Where they don't claim a lot of, but I think might actually be kind of interesting is anything oily skin in general. They have a slide on reducing blackheads, whiteheads, excess sebum, and oily skin. To me, the images themselves, I don't really know what to make of these, but sebum is very difficult to tackle in general. So a decrease in say 30% excess sebum, not super sure of their methodology, but I still think for those of you that have oily skin and honestly, there's just very few products out there that have any level of clinical data on
Mm.
reducing sebum excess production. I would say, hey, this might not be a bad product to try out. So I feel like I just tossed probably 5 out of their 6 claims under the bus. But yes, that's who I recommend this product for.
Well, I think this might just be a general theme of peptides in general, and you might feel this way like as we go through some of the formulas. It's like these products, they should do something, like what that something is, how much of that something that benefit will be, all question marks. But I think that you'll see as we go through the products and the formulation, I feel like the thought behind it is like, it's got to have a benefit, right? And I think that's the same with this product is like, it's cheap enough. It could be helpful. How helpful it is, you won't know until you try it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say, even though I kind of scrutinize all their claims and their clinical pictures, they at least did a clinical, which still
True.
beats a lot of products out there.
A lot of peptide products too.
Yes.
Yeah, totally agree. So that's the general comparison for budget peptide serums. I want to be clear. I do think these two products are probably one of the better candidates of affordable peptides out there. There are more, but we think that, in terms of the blends they use, there are a couple that are better established. And in terms of insurance policy, we do feel like these two are definitely worth considering. Let's move on. So we have a second category, and this one we're not going to spend too much time on, but we found that there are a lot of products where they'll pair peptides with gold standard actives. And probably the main category is retinoids. So for example, we did this with our double play because it makes a lot of sense in tackling skin concerns like wrinkles. There's also, shout out to Educated Mess. They just launched their product, Freeze Frame. That one is actually paired with resveratrol in focusing on anti-aging concerns as well. There are a couple other products out there that do the same. Obviously, we like this strategy because I think it showcases our general feeling around peptides and that they are a great secondary active to some of the main actives out there. And in terms of the final category, this is where I feel like my brain just like gave up, but then also felt like so many fell into this, where it's like, let's just dump every active we know, including peptides, into a product and leave it at that.
So I find these products really kind of annoying to decode because there's a lot. And then I swear these products also dump amino acids, like individual amino acids in the product. So you have a really long list of ingredients and they sound really cool. Like blah, 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 peptides, alanine, valine, threonine, da, 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 pa. We have all these things. I'm just like,
Yeah, exactly. It is such a pain for us, and a lot of times why we just can't speak to it. And the worst part is a lot of these don't come with testing, which is like, why? Like, there's literally no takeaway. It's just like, oh, well, I put all these things in there. It's got to do something, so we don't need to test.
You know what's funny is like, sorry, really, really, really early on in our Chemist Confessions journey, we made a joke post on Thanksgiving that, for your leftover turkey, you can just put it on your face to give yourself a protein mask and it can brighten and hydrate. I feel like these stuff might as well be a turkey mask. Just proteins and amino acids, peptides.
Yeah. So hot take, Chemist Confessions thinks some of these these peptide products equate to putting turkey on your face, I guess. But despite our poo-pooing, let's quickly walk through this. I did want to emphasize why we find this so difficult is because different peptides provide different benefits. And I'll put up a review papers really great table where they actually broke down some of these peptides and the data behind it, and we'll highlight the efficacy. Yeah, it's a thankless job. It's definitely a lot of work, but you'll just see from, these 3 or 4 peptides listed here, and there's more in this chart. Some of them fight wrinkles. Some of them improve skin texture. Other ones not listed here are provide brightening properties. Not everyone provides the same level of benefits. And so my strategy here and recommendation would be, if you are trying to shop in this realm or do happen to be intrigued by some of these products, shop by the skin concern that you're looking to target and shop for products with clinical testing, because you'll actually find that the claims that are there are actually quite specific. And so, for example, Drunk Elephant's Protini is probably a longtime peptide product now. This is their clinical testing data for their product. They show 96% improvement in skin tone radiance, luminosity, 93% improvement in skin texture, 90%, sorry, I say this as an improvement, but it's actually the amount of subjects that showed improvement. So it's 90% of subjects showed improvement in skin hydration. So if you are looking for things that are more in this like wrinkle fighting realm, or let's say lifting, plumping, this aspect, it doesn't really speak to that in this product. And that's where I would be like, maybe this is not the product for you. So hopefully that's a good example of what I'm trying to show here is like the claim is probably your best indicator of what peptide product to pick. Does that make sense, Gloria?
Hold on. Yes, it does. And I also think that, yeah, I know. Even we are like getting caught up in all this. Like, it's honestly, this is literally the skincare category that's like word soup. It's just claims
Yeah.
and words and soup. And I also think what's funny is that Protini, I think, has at this point built enough recognition that there is a perception of what it does. And I am
Mm.
not 100% sure if that perception matches the claims, right? It
Mhm.
feels like, oh, it's a peptide cream, so it's anti-aging. But you look at the claims, it's like, huh, like I don't know if that's what it does.
Actually, it's funny you brought that up. Crap. I really wanted to show you. Oh man, I wanted to show you their next claims image that I feel
Uh-huh.
like you would get a kick out of. I found this interesting because this kind
Uh-huh.
of covers the traditional expectation of peptides.
Mm-hmm.
In this marketing image that that drunk elephant shows, it says visible reduction in fine lines and improvement in skin firmness and radiance.
Mm-hmm.
And they show a before picture and an after 4 weeks picture. But if you look at the tiny print below, it
Mm-hmm.
says results when using a routine with Umbra Sheer, their best number 9, C Firma Fresh, TLC Framboos, and virgin marula oil. I think that's in conjunction with their Protini product. But yeah, I just found that kind of fascinating. It's like not
Oh,
helpful.
yeah. So, I mean, 4 weeks is a very aggressive timeline. If you're starting new on actives, having vitamin C, glycolic acid, and sunscreen can
Yeah.
definitely make a big difference to your skin quality in general. Yeah, I don't know what I mean. Protini could have brought something to the table, but do I know what it is? I can't tell you.
Yeah, exactly. So we felt like this was a good example of this category. It's not to say that Protini doesn't work. It's just a matter of, just know what you're looking for and what you want to achieve with peptides. And that will
Right.
probably help you kind of figure out these active soups that Gloria claims. So that's it for the meat. Hopefully, we've kind of given you 3 categories of peptide products to look for. Here's the tough part. As chemists, decoding based on the inky name of a peptide is not helpful to us.
Okay, Victoria and I got our start where we kind of decode ingredient list, highlighted relevant information on ingredient list. This is a category where not only should you not do it as a consumer, we as chemists don't really do that either because the ingredient name of it tells you very little
Yeah.
about the peptide. When chemists talk about peptides, we actually use the trade name a lot. And this is where I can probably write a mini novel of why it's just such a mess, right? So for a blend like Matrixyl, it caught a lot of buzz. It's a long proven peptide blend that's probably one of the most famous one. That Matrixyl as a name starts to mean something. So this is what I mean by chemists communicate in these trade names. So when we talk about the different peptides, when we're formulating, we're all referring to different trade names of things we're looking at. But unless it's as famous as a Matrixyl, if a product just throws a peptide trade name out there, it still doesn't mean anything for the consumer. So I totally understand the frustration here because you're kind of caught in a no man's land where you're like, it says it has peptides. I don't know which peptide. And then you maybe message someone or you ask, hey, is SH a legal peptide good? We're like, well, it could be. It depends on the source. We can't tell you just based on ingredient list either. So all in all, this is, I guess, the main takeaway here is you are right. There is not a lot of logic here. When you're shopping, this is why we put so much weight on clinical data, but even then, it's kind of sparse and hard to come by. We should mention that probably one of the most helpful way to think about this is when you're thinking about adding to peptides, even though it can do everything in skincare, sky's the limit in terms of what it can tackle. We would say it's probably more worthy, like based on what we know, based on all the background data we see on different suppliers that have these different peptide blends, we'll say anti-aging is actually still the main arena where interesting
Mm.
data comes from. So lifting, firming, wrinkles, we wouldn't go out of our way to say, hey, this should replace your retinol, even though one single
Hmm.
wall will see some very impressive data. But in terms of anti-aging, it can definitely be um, a really important add to a routine. Let's say to spice up your retinol to kind of add that extra layer to it. All the other concerns that you associated with, we'll say soothing is one that may have interesting data. Um, to me personally, I think hyperpigmentation is where you really shouldn't consider. You shouldn't get peptides for hyperpigmentation. Just because the data there's some data, but does it how does it compare to more traditional ones like say azelaic acid, glycolic acid? Not that impressive relatively. So yeah, those are a lot of feelings.
Yeah, so we're going to get into, actual application and like shopping for peptides in the next section, but let's take a quick break and a breather with our animal fun fact.
Yes,
Yay!
please.
All right, so today it's my turn for the animal fun fact, and today I'm going to talk about royal terns. And if you don't know what a royal tern is, we're back to birds and bird behavior. I think you guys know for long enough that we've talked about a lot of birds, and you'll find that a lot of birds are assholes, and you'll find that a lot of them are asshole parents. So I did want to mention the royal tern just because, one, their mating is quite interesting. How males court the females is that they will offer them fish. They, I give thee fish.
That's so
Please marry me
nice.
and look at my fish. Um, Sometimes it's interesting because they mentioned that they can court both in the air and on the ground. And so
Wait,
I
so
was
it's like,
like,
ma'am, you forgot your fish.
yeah, they're like flapping around. They're like have this fish in their mouth. So I thought that was quite cute. That they basically provide a courting gift. The other thing is that when they finally decide to come together, the female has approved of whatever gift it provides. It's actually not just fish; it can be a crab or shrimp. The two will come close together, head to tail, and they will begin to walk in a tight circle together, and they'll strut side by side through their colony and basically take their married stroll together. So I thought that was quite cute.
So cute.
Unfortunately, those courtship displays will actually attract the interest of a third tern male. So they can often have disputes and aggressive displays,
I
trying to
object.
steal. Yeah,
I object.
exactly. It's exactly that. It's the I object to this wedding part.
You said my fish was too small. That looks like an even smaller fish. I object.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but they did mention that the species does appear to be monogamous, and the fact that males will actually feed the females not only during courtship with their fish, but also when they are pregnant and during their incubation time to help incubate the eggs, which I'm like, oh, helpful husband. And on top of that, the males will actually help with the raising of chicks as well, and providing for their chicks until they are, I think, about 8 months. So, all in all, it's just more of a wholesome story of the royal terns, how they get married, and how they have kids, and how they have a healthy relationship. So,
This is the most wholesome bird fact we have shared here. We have shared about birds tricking other birds to raise their own kids. We
yes,
have
yes,
the
that one.
theft, the number of thefts that happen with birds, ridiculous. And people
Yeah,
that like the cheating birds. This is so wholesome.
I know. Royal terns, man. So, just bringing y'all, a nice little story about a bird community. So, we're going to wrap this up with a few tips on how to shop for peptides.
Mhm.
I first want to start with what kind of Gloria had pretty much touched on at the very end of the second part, which is, how we tier certain peptides and their skin concerns. So to summarize, we think peptides are pretty good at fighting wrinkles. However, we don't consider these that they're going to be replacing retinols, vitamin C, any of these home peels in certain of their level of wrinkle fighting benefit.
Also, I was gonna add that, but this is also why it can be such a good secondary active
Mhm.
to your retinols and whatnot
Yes.
in anti-aging. Because if you remember the first segment when Victoria broke down all the pathways to act on, it is none of the same, and it's not even similar pathways to retinols and vitamin C's,
Yeah.
glycolic acid, etc. So it really does bring a different angle to this.
That's a really great point. And then also because peptides are pretty vanilla. There's
Mhm.
very low irritation potential. So this is kind of, it just feels like an easy one that can slot into, routines with heavy hitter actives. So that's a first tier. Less impressive is the skin brightening claims, just because you guys all know hyperpigmentation is very stubborn. And we just haven't seen a ton of data around great peptides tackling this concern. Possibly interesting is the soothing category. There are more, we would say, peptides that are coming out
Yeah.
in this arena. And then I think Gloria has a lot of feels. It's the way not interesting skin concern is the preventative aging realm.
Yeah, I think peptides marketing has been gearing towards younger and younger audiences in recent years. I first noticed this when my 14-year-old niece said, I want the Protini for Christmas. I'm like, yeah,
No,
I'm like, why?
no.
It's like, oh, TikTok says it's really good. I'm like, yeah, but what are you using it for? So it just, again, it's one of those things where, peptides are usually positioned as actively treating things like wrinkles, sagging, whatnot. In terms of prevention, we don't see a lot of data around, or at least it's not super interesting. To me, I just feel like there's not a lot of solid reasons for a very young person to have peptides in their routine for anti-aging purposes or age prevention purposes. Soothing is an angle where younger people can consider peptides, but not this. And the other category I already mentioned is pigmentation. There are some peptides that will be positioned as brightening, and the data's not really very sexy. We have a lot of episodes heavier hit, covering ingredients in this category, like our arbutin hydroquinone type of episode, tranexamic acid kojic. I have not seen a single peptide for hyperpigmentation where I look at it, I'm like, wow, I wish you tested against hydroquinone because I bet it would do really well. Nada.
I did also want to point out, as a formulator we've worked with peptides, there's a couple formats that I don't love peptides in, but they
Mhm.
are in. I was going to say sunscreens and makeup. I
Yeah.
just don't think it's necessary. I don't think it provides any benefit. Peptides they also have their quirks as well. Things like penetration, needing enough to do something and get the benefit. And it's just with all of that competing with sunscreen filters, makeup systems, and powders, I just don't think it's necessary. You don't have to pay extra to get these actives in those formats. And then finally, before we end, I did have a couple maybe annoying but hard questions for Gloria that I did want to
Oh.
ask for fun.
Mhm.
The first one is uh, obviously we have our double play where we pair retinol and peptides. But if you had to choose, let's say you have been using the ordinary, okay? How do you feel about upgrading to Protini?
Ah,
Like the price difference, like do you feel that allure? Like would you, if you had the budget for it, like how compelled do you feel?
I think this is one of those categories where in any other category, like a retinol or hyperpigmentation is a big one, where when we talk about skincare price points, we're not talking about the extremes, like the $1 creams versus the $400 creams. Talking about ranging maybe 20 to 150. I feel like in all these other categories, there are products in each price tier that I can say, hey, this is great for this, and this is a step up from that. And this is a product that can justify this price tag, yada, yada, yada. Peptides is very strange to me. It's not linear, right? What's using Protini is not the same blend that's used in the ordinary. So I don't even know if it's an upgrade other than a price tag upgrade.
Yeah. So general, it sounds like you feel pain.
I feel pain. And I think honestly, and the thing is, when you are talking about changing our peptide products, because it's so non-linear, it's even between peptide products, it's not on the same comparison scale, right? So if
Totally.
I've been using the ordinary and I think it's been working well for me, I honestly wouldn't even know what the logical next upgrade would be. I would just stick with what works because
Mhm.
Protini wouldn't be in your routine the same manner at all.
True.
So
It
yeah.
is more of a lotion product for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, I have one last question. For sensitive skin types that, let's say, don't do well with some of the main actives, for example, retinol,
Hmm.
would this be a category you recommend in replace? Or would you have them start really looking into like the derivatives, like the mysterious derivatives? Like how do you feel about its place for maybe the sensitive skin types?
Okay. That's a good one. I don't really know because I think anecdotally, a lot of people who are only mildly sensitive, so let's say you are a little sensitive to retinol, you might have better luck with bakuchiol. But it's not super direct because just within using retinol as an example, I myself am very retinol sensitive, and it turned out bakuchiol also hurts my skin. And Grand Active is one that is very gentle on me, but also makes me question if it does anything. So this whole category is like very wishy washy for me in terms of So for me, I think the derivative still makes me feel like I'd rather make retinol work than to
Mm,
commit to a derivative. If you're very, very sensitive, it is very likely that most, if not all, of the retinoids in the umbrella will give you some level of trouble.
yeah,
And in that case,
100%.
the thing though, even though as a chemist, I don't think peptides can replace retinol. They don't work the same way. It's just not the same. But if you really can't tolerate a retinoid, instead of let's say you try like 2 or 3 different retinoids, then they all suck for you. Instead of just getting stuck in the cycle of okay, just one more retinol product, I think this is it. I will say stop torturing yourself and your skin and your time. Peptides is still worthy of trying. Actually, recently we got a comment on Instagram asking us about actually neck creams. She said that her neck area is very sensitive to
Mm.
retinoids, and she really doesn't want to use a retinol. But so many neck cream nowadays have some sort of retinoid in it.
It's true.
And I looked into the products a little bit, and a lot of neck creams with interesting data has some level of peptides in them. So yeah,
Mm,
so I guess my really long rant can be boiled down to while I would never think of it as a direct replacement of retinoids, um, I would recommend it for those of you who are like, I can't do this retinization anymore.
yeah, totally agree. And with that, to sum up, we're just going to sum it up in all honestly one statement, and that is peptides can be a great secondary active for
hmm
anti-aging benefits.
hmm
It is easy to slot in. You typically are going to buy them in a serum format, or they're going to already be paired with some of the greats like retinol, and that is also a-okay. So long story short, if you are in the market for tackling some of the skin concerns like wrinkles, texture, I believe even there's texture and elasticity, these 3 realms, there's definitely options there. But that's it. That's the end of our episode. Gloria, where can they find us?
You can find us on our website at chemistconfessions.com. You can write to us at info@chemistconfessions.com. DM us on Instagram at chemist.confessions. We are also on TikTok. You can also comment directly on this video if you're on YouTube. Let us know if this kind of format is helpful. This is new for us, diving into such a big topic, trying to condense it and pull out the threads that's useful for you guys. So definitely let us know. We are coming towards the end of the season. We will have just a couple more episodes to go before we wrap up this year. But please still tell us what other topics you want us to want us to cover. We are already planning out some next year's structure and new episodes. So we will see you guys next week.
Yay, thank you guys. Bye bye.